Welcome to the Phillip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Phillip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phillip Wylie Show. Today I'm very excited to have my friend Michael Lisi joining. So Mike and I go back to like 2013, 2012. I was going through the OSCP certification and Mike had already been through that. We'd met, I think, through some forums or message boards that were like certification related. And then of course connected on social media. And then we finally met for the first time at DerbyCon in 2018, I believe it was.
It was a long time after we had first started chatting. Yeah. I think it was on the IRC boards and the forum posts for offensive security for that certification. We would post time to time when we got stuck. This is the early days of the OSCP. And yeah, we just started talking outside of that and comparing notes a little bit, comparing techniques, and just finding ourselves in a really similar place professionally. So it was just, it was a really interesting first click there, and yeah, it took us a long time to finally get a chance to meet up together. But man, that was great back in the DerbyCon. Get days to sync up, have some breakfast, catch up, see how everybody's doing.
Yeah, it's a nice thing because one of the things for the listeners, we get to meet up at least once a year at conferences. It's turned into pretty much like DEF CON now, and then any other conferences. You're going to be at Hack Space Con this year too, correct?
I was originally going to, but I ended up having a scheduling conflict with a different event, so I won't make it to Hackspace this year. I do plan on going to RSA and DEF CON, and there might be a few others sprinkled in, but Hackspace ended up having to get rescheduled, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's too bad. I thought I saw the Red Team Village was going to be there, so I thought maybe that you'd be there.
Yeah, the Red Team Village will be there. We ended up having another person on the team committing to flying down and representing the village there. So we'll actually have three people. Two are other folks for the village. One is Philippe. He is giving a talk at DerbyCon or at HackSpaceCon, so he's going to be there. Then we have our director of workshops, Corey. He was going down to check it out anyway because it was just such a fun conference being at the Space Center, and then this year at both the Space Center and the resort. I just had a great time with it. So I was really bummed that I couldn't do it. So we ended up just replacing me with somebody else from the team.
Very cool. So before we kind of get into the conversation, if you wouldn't mind sharing your hacker origin story, kind of how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. My story goes back quite a ways, and it meanders a little bit because I didn't have a plan to be a hacker when I started. It's something that I found myself enjoying along the way. But back when I was a teenager, I was really into just the building of computers, playing around with them, just learning about them, because this was mid-90s when things were still pretty new. You didn't really have them in every home. And so I was super interested in that. I had some friends that got me involved. But I knew that I wanted to do something with computers, even that early on. So that's where all my focus was. That's really all I did. My parents were very concerned about it. They're, I'm spending all my time in my room on this computer thing. Like, what the heck am I doing? But I was very focused. I was very motivated. So I ended up going to college for computer science. And while I was there, I got my first job in IT, which was help desk, just answering the phones, fixing all the problems, learning how to interact with users, fix all the issues that they're having. It is really more of a customer service role than a technical role, but it was a good introduction. So I ended up working at this credit union as IT for about 5 years, and I migrated roles over time from help desk to system administrator to network engineer to system analyst. And then I got moved over to the application side where I got to do some programming on all the financial applications and on the mainframes and things there. And that was a good experience. But once I graduated college, I got scooped up by a defense contractor and I got thrown into some research and development, which was cybersecurity related. So very big pivot, something very new. Got to do some research on techniques and technologies and those types of things that were just brand new, right? I was digging through RFCs, learning how to manipulate VPN tunnels, IPsec tunnels, those types of things, and that was just like so much fun. It was so overwhelming, but I had a great time with it. But while I was part of that team, two things happened. The first was that I learned about what a CTF was, a capture the flag. There was a team in the company that was participating in the DEF CON CTF quals. This was back at DEF CON 19. And they knew about us. We were a different group within the company, but they invited us out to Cincinnati to compete in those quals. So a few members of our team went out there, and we spent the whole weekend hacking away on the CTF. I had no idea what it was. I barely contributed, but I was there with this whole group of hackers and all these other people, and I had just the best time with it. And it turns out that we qualified that team for the main CTF for DEF CON. So the company decided that they would send us all out to DEF CON, which I had never experienced, I had no knowledge of. And that really is where that origin story took the big turn, because once I got to DEF CON and I got to experience that environment and all the people and all the cool stuff that people were doing, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So we got back from that event. We placed, I think, we didn't do great in the main CTF, right? I spent the whole weekend in a hotel room. I got to check out the conference grounds and things. But after that, we got back and we had some government agencies reaching out to the team to do some penetration testing, which again, I hadn't done, but other members of our team were really familiar with that. And then I got to learn that they got to do all these really cool offensive things to systems and not get in trouble for it. And I thought, that sounds really cool. How do I do that? And so a member of my team told me about the OSCP certification by Offensive Security. This was back in 2013. I just decided that's what I wanted to do. So I just spent all of my free time doing the OSCP outside of my work, my daily 9-to-5 job, until I got through that certification. And I've really never looked back since then. I decided to get into consulting, get into pen testing, do all those types of things. And here we are, 12 years later almost. And, I'm still doing it. I haven't changed anything up. So it's been a fun ride. And again, just not a typical path, but it's how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, these stories are really what's important, because and that's one of the reasons I have people share these stories on the show, because back when I used to teach at Dallas College, I would share stories about pen tests and stuff. And my students said, we really love the stories. That's one of our favorite parts. Could you bring in some of your friends from the community to kind of share their stories? And I would bring in a couple guest speakers each semester. And when I started the podcast, I had people share their stories on there. And the feedback I was getting from people listening was they really liked the origin stories. And sometimes it could be an episode with not that many listeners, but that person worked in a specific field they did, or they lived in a specific place, went to a certain college or whatever, and that really resonated with them. So that's one of the reasons I always make sure people share their stories, because it's helpful information. Because even like myself, I didn't have a technical background, never thought I would ever do this in a million years. And so those stories are really important for people to hear, to kind of help motivate them. So yeah, so I appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, of course. And I think you make a good point there too, that so many people that I talk to about penetration testing and those types of things that have been in maybe adjacent roles, software engineering, or, working in networking or in system engineering, something like that. They always say like, oh, I think like I would love to do that, but I feel like I would be really bad at it. And honestly, one of the first talks that I ever gave was how these different roles that I had in the past just unexpectedly made me really good at doing penetration testing because of some of the experiences that I gained from those roles. And I always end up having that conversation with people that are interested and explain to them how, they have some really unique insights into the security of systems or security of things that they're associated with that most people don't, and would benefit them if they were to pursue a role in information security or pen testing or something. Like, they would be ahead of the game from many other people just because they have such a deep history with one specific area. And I don't think that that's really highlighted a lot just in general, that people are able to focus on the benefits of their current roles or their strengths towards pursuing like that offensive career.
Yeah, I think people downplay the role of IT, even help desk roles, desktop support, sysadmin, or even development roles. I think they don't really realize, because if you go back and you think of the structure of a college degree, computer science, or one of the former MIS degrees they used to do that was basically IT based education. You think about the different classes and stuff you take. If you're going through MIS degree, there's some cases that you would be going through some database administration stuff, maybe some coding, maybe some networking, and all that stuff's in there for a reason to build that foundation. But I think one of the disadvantages we have nowadays for people new coming in is they can jump right into pen testing if possible. I mean, it is possible for them to jump straight into it, and it's too tempting to skip out on the basics and go right to it. And I think that's a mistake people are making. They're not really taking the time to learn other things or really do a good job of working on those basics. In some cases, that may just be because they don't have the right influence to tell them, someone like yourself, hey, I did help desk, desktop support. I did, sysadmin work and network security or network administration. They don't have that advice, or they don't know that, have those background stories. Maybe they don't have friends that are working in technology and they totally miss out on that.
No, you're right. And I think that's an important thing for anybody looking to get into penetration testing to consider, is that there's a ton of competition right now, especially on the entry level role to get into pen testing. So those kids and adults and everybody else that's going from a college role into pen testing, they're trying to jump right in, which is fine. I totally understand that. It's what they want to do. But I would definitely highlight the benefits of getting one of those alternative roles to understand not only how the IT operations work for businesses and organizations, or how development processes work, but all those things like really help you prepare yourself when you get into that pen testing role as a consultant or as an internal team, to understand like the politics and logistics and the impacts and all these things that happen in business, which you don't really expect and you don't really have knowledge of. If you're coming right out of school and you don't understand how business works, you're going to be at a disadvantage there to benefit your customers in the best way possible. So there's not a downside to doing one of these other roles to eventually transition into security. The positive sides are actually really, really high, because you'll start developing some of that technical experience, the hands-on experience, which sets you apart from many of the other people that are trying to jump right into cybersecurity or pen testing or something similar. And not only that, you can better understand the responsibilities and the roles when you're in those interviews and you're talking about those things, to give those companies that you're interviewing for a bit more confidence that you're going to understand the role and operate within the role to the extent that they're hopeful, that they're looking for, right? If you can come in and talk about all those aspects because of this other experience that you've gathered, in my opinion, you're going to be in a much better spot for that eventual career. For me, like I said, I didn't get into it until I was, probably around 30, right? So that was way after when I graduated school or doing all those other things. And it didn't really set me back that much by doing these other roles ahead of time. So for anybody out there that is looking to get into the security space, like, don't shy away from some of those other roles. It's going to give you some experience that's going to be really relevant towards being effective in these other eventual roles that you're looking to end up in and to I guess rise up into, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Those are some great thoughts. So what are your thoughts now? Because I mean, the OSCP played a major role in kind of helping you move into a pen testing career. Do you still think the OSCP is a value?
It's hard for me to say objectively how the OSCP compares now to how it was then. Back in 2013, when you and I were doing it, there wasn't a lot of competition. There wasn't so many other opportunities. So that was really, it was pretty much OSCP, some SANS stuff, I believe, like GPen might have been out around that same time. And then you had things like CEH, Security Plus, those ones that are still kind of foundational and around. At the time, it was an awesome way to get hands-on technical exposure to that. And I think that that's still very true, that the labs are great. There's tons of experience that you get on how to hack things, how to research, how to do the development on exploits and all that stuff. But compared to all of the new training grounds and certifications and things that are out there, I don't have enough experience to say if that's the way to go, or if some of these other alternatives are just as good, if not better, for the same dollar cost or for the same time commitment and things. Because there's just so much variation out there now, which is great, but it's also very challenging to decide which one to go after for people. So I haven't done a certification in a while. My latest was a renewal of the CEH in 2022, which I still did not really enjoy all that much. But outside of that, it's really hard to say on how effective the OSCP is into other things. But one of the things that I did find is that it set me up for success, which is very true, but it also didn't set me up for the expectations on what I would experience when I was working with a customer. Because with OSCP, everything's breakable, everything's hackable. You're learning something. And when you get into corporate environments or businesses, that's not always the case. So there was a real just, lesson learned as soon as I started consulting and doing these pen tests, that not everything was breakable all the time. And it was, just a little bit of a wake up moment that I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I thought, and fortunately for me, I was in a pen testing role when I was going through the OSCP, is just some of the approach back then where, you can't use vulnerability scanners. There's limited use to Metasploit. A pen test, it's all that stuff is in play. You're not limited on how many times you can use Metasploit, or, you're going to use vulnerability scanners because you've got more than 5 systems you got to test. And to be able to scale what you're doing is kind of tough without using a vulnerability scanner.
Yeah, I can understand where they're coming from on that too. They don't want you to be too reliant on a tool, but they want to make sure that you're really demonstrating the knowledge and the processes that they're reinforcing through that. So by decoupling the reliance on specific tools, I get that, and there's some importance there. But to your point, once you're out in the field, you really want to be as efficient as possible. So if one tool really does all this work for you and it follows your processes and your methodologies, then why not rely on that tool versus doing things the manual way? So I get where they're coming from, but I understand the other side of it too, because at the end of the day, for me, I want to be as efficient as possible. So I'm going to use the tool that best reflects that. And if that means I'm using Metasploit for all my shells and those things, great. If there's other opportunities or other tools that work better, then obviously that's the path I'm going to take as an actual consultant doing the work in the field.
So what path would you recommend for someone now that wants to get into offensive security? How would you, if say someone going from no experience up to being able to do pen testing, what would you recommend?
Well, the first thing that I'd recommend, like I said before, is not to shy away from any sort of technology or technology adjacent career opportunity that gets you some experience into the environments for which you're looking to eventually work within. If that's network pen testing or apps or whatever, find a job that will get you hands-on access to that, not necessarily an offensive, but just exposure to it, to understand the business, to understand those operations. The second thing that I learned, and this is really only in the past 4 years, is the professional networking, volunteering for conferences, volunteering for events, reaching out, making connections on social media in the cybersecurity industry. Those things are so beneficial. I couldn't believe how much it's changed things for me just in the past 4 years, right? When I was doing my last consulting job before starting my own company, I was very focused on just the execution of the tests, writing it up, delivering the report, and that was the extent of it. But now, as an entrepreneur, building a business, building out that professional network is enormous, because you end up having these relationships with people that are just spread throughout the country or the world, and they have just so much experience, or they know so many other people, that you can really reach out and find a common interest or find a common contact to help you find those roles or opportunities or things that may not get posted, or you may need somebody inside of that company to advocate for you in various ways. And by doing these volunteering things or just being part of these competitions and events, you end up interacting with these really important people, and that ends up paying off down the road when you're looking for things. As an example, there was somebody that worked on the NCAA Cyber Games with us and worked on the Red Team Village with us, and they got phenomenal job right out of college. And then we saw all the TechCrunch stuff that happened in 2023 and part of 2024. So they got let go. But what they were able to do is leverage those connections they made through our TV and through the cyber games to find other postings and get a job much faster than really what the average looks like. So making those connections is hugely beneficial to anybody that's looking to get into the industry.
So yeah, why don't you discuss the Red Team Village a little bit for those that may not be familiar with the Red Team Village?
Sure. So currently I serve as president of the Red Team Village, which is a nonprofit organization. Largely, well, let's talk about the mission first. The mission of the Red Team Village is to spread knowledge, training, awareness, technical expertise, skill development, all of those types of things related to offensive security to the community, right? We try to operate workshops and villages and just different sorts of talks and things so that people could learn new techniques and level up their skills and just understand, what's involved in being like an offensive security operator or a red teamer or whatever the case may be. I got started with them probably about 5 years ago through a connection through the cyber games. I was looking into researching CTFs and how to run them better, and I got in contact with the organizers there. I've been associated with them for a while. Right now, up to the past year or so, Red Team Village largely operated at DEF CON. We have a space inside of DEF CON where we have talks and workshops and all sorts of things related to offensive security, and that's been growing quite a bit. We've gotten more popular over the years, so we're starting to expand outside of DEF CON to interact with more people, because DEF CON, as great as it is, it's also very difficult for people to get to at times. The cost is high, the travel costs are high. So we're trying to do more things. So this past year, we got an invitation to go down to Brazil to a conference there called Hackers to Hackers. We put on some talks related to offensive security there. We're going to be at Hackspace Con this year, running a CTF and having just a little space for interacting with everybody, making connections. We're obviously going to be at DEF CON this year with a village and 2 events, actually. We're going to have our Red Team Village CTF, and we're going to have another contest called Cyber War Games, and it's like a handful of different types of events for people to participate within. And finally, we have an ongoing series called RTV Cron, which is a live web stream once a month where we're going to have a free workshop. Somebody's going to come in, present on a topic. Everything's free and open. We're going to talk about village things, anything associated with RTV, and make that available. So yeah, hopefully one of those things works with anybody that's interested in learning more. And of course, we have our Discord server if you're wanting to interact with us or the rest of the community.
So it'd be a good opportunity for people to volunteer.
We do have the call for volunteers open. Yes, absolutely. Some of my really close friends now I met through RTV volunteering. We just sat next to each other at one of the booths and we were just chit-chatting, and it's just like, oh yeah, what do you do? And they run a company out of Virginia or out of Florida or something, and it's just like, oh cool, like we sync up, and now we're really good friends. That's how I met Ken, who runs Red Seer and Hackspace Con, along with Dan. Like all these people love to be part of the community. They'll volunteer at different events just to be there, and it's just, you don't know who you're going to run into and make a new friend out of.
And you kind of touched on CTFs. How important do you think CTFs are to anyone, even offensive security and cybersecurity in general?
I personally am a big fan of CTFs. I've been involved with them for the last 10 or so years. I think they're a great way to tackle a specific problem, but they're not necessarily hyper realistic, right? There's skills to be gained with a CTF, but it shouldn't be just the only marker of skill development, right? You should be doing other things to complement any sort of competition-based things. But what it does do, and at least the way that I approach CTFs, is to find a specific concept that I'm trying to educate upon and then build the challenge around that, just to raise awareness about a technique or about a concept for somebody to maybe get enlightened on, or just to learn something about. Like my goal for a CTF when I'm running one is just for educational purposes, right? It's just, hey, here's something that you may end up doing in the workforce. Is it interesting or is it not interesting? Because if it's super not interesting, I love hearing that from students, because it may be tied into a specific job role, and then they're trying this challenge and like, wow, this challenge really sucks, and everything related to this sucks. I wouldn't want a job like this. And if they're in college and this is their first experience with that, then they can align their perspective to the right role based on what's interesting to them. So sometimes we've had students that have just come up to me and said like, hey, I want to get into like incident response or a SOC role or something. And we give them some of these challenges related to it. And they're like, yeah, no, that wasn't that much fun. So I think I'm going to look into maybe offensive security or doing some other different role, which is great insight to have versus, somebody that comes and graduates and gets into the job. And then they're like, wow, this is actually not fun at all. I don't want to do this. And now they feel like they've wasted all this time.
Yeah, it's a good point, because just imagine spending 2 years or 4 years to get a degree, get out and start the job, and it's just not what you expect it to be. It's kind of interesting, a similar experience. I had a coworker when I worked at US Bank. So when I started there, he was working on the pen test team, but he originally started out like help desk or something like that, some other area, IT, and he was taking all these SANS digital forensics courses. He had been through several of those, and he decided, when it come time to take another course, he thought, I'm going to take the G-Pen this time, because maybe if I learn about pen testing, it'll help me be better with digital forensics. And he fell in love with pen testing, and now that's what he does. He's been doing that for probably about 8 or 10 years now, something like that. So if he hadn't tried something else, who knows if he may just burn out of digital forensics and went back to IT or some other area that he didn't enjoy as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's super relevant. That's the thing that I try to take to the students when we work with them. Same with anybody else that's really interested in CTFs. Like, obviously there's many that are just the Jeopardy style with traditional categories like reverse engineering or exploitation or something. But now there's so many new ones out there that are really specific to different types of jobs and opportunities and roles. I would definitely encourage somebody to try out one of those other ones, even if it's not related to what you think your interest is. Just understand like what challenges they face, because it could be something that really clicks with you and just works way better than what you were currently doing, and you can bring some of the experience that you have into this other role. Or maybe you just learn that, hey, this reinforces that I'm on the right path. I don't know that the grass is greener anymore, because now I've tried some of those things out and realized that, yeah, it's just not for me.
So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share that we didn't cover?
Not necessarily. The main things to cover here are, I want to speak on behalf of the Red Team Village here, that there's calls for everything open. We're going to have that open till the end of April. I don't know exactly when you're going to release this, Phil, but assuming that we're still open for calls for workshops and things and volunteers and all that fun stuff, we would love to have people join us and participate and see us at DEF CON. Other than that, you can find me on X or on Blue Sky at Mike Hacks Things. Same on LinkedIn. Well, LinkedIn, it's just my name, but outside of that, just looking forward to seeing everybody at these upcoming events and everything. And Phil, you and I will hopefully get together sooner than later.
Yeah, hopefully so. I look forward to it. So appreciate you taking time to join me today.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Phillip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Phillip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter at Phillip Wylie. Until next time.